Hey guys, I'm Drago, and if I sound tired, it's because I am. And the reason why is because I've been staying up late for a lot of nights in a row to play the game Lethal Company. And if you don't know what Lethal Company is, it's this new game that's come out made by one dude, which is really impressive. And basically, you go to alien moons, you go around, you salvage scrap, and you have to sell that to meet your daily quota or you're fired. It's a game full of laughs, screams, and utter horror. Look out for those videos coming to my gaming channel soon. But the game is just so much fun, especially with friends, and I thought I had to make some fan art of it. So here we are. I decided to make a sort of animated one. It's not really, it's just sort of a GIF of different images put together. But I just wanted to do something a bit different. So yeah, here's the speed paint. I hope you enjoy. So my idea was basically to have this player character in the middle. Have him holding something like the bolt. And the reason why I went for the big bolt is because it reminds me of Ratchet and Clank and getting all the gold bolts and stuff. It's more like one of the titanium or platinum bolts, but same sort of thing, same collectible. But yeah, I was gonna have him in the middle and then basically have different monsters appearing behind him when it lights up. So it'd be two different versions of the lighting, basically. A dark version and a bright version with the lights on, and that's when a monster will appear. I didn't have much time to do this art, unfortunately. It was sort of a last-minute decision to make this art, and I started it like a few days before my upload date, and I don't want to miss my upload date. I'm already having to record this on the day that I need to upload it, because loads of things have happened and I've been busy. In fact, this video might be like a day late, and if it is, I really apologise for that. But yeah, I did unfortunately have to like go really quickly for this. I fear it's not quite up to my usual quality, but I'll let you guys decide on that. Quite simple shapes for this guy, even though I'm really bad at human anatomy or humanoid or whatever these guys are. They're quite simple shapes. It's just a helmet and then it's quite a cartoony style, so having it, you know, not 100% accurate to realistic anatomy doesn't really matter because the style fits it not being realistic. I still really struggled with the hands though. Hands suck so much, it doesn't matter if you're doing a cartoony style, it sucks, I just can't. How is something that I see every single day of my life one of the hardest things for me to draw? Usually I use a fairly thin line art in my style. This is because I go for a bit more of a realistic style, sort of at least semi-realism. However, with this game having a cartoony style, I thought that it would work to go slightly thicker on the line art. Not too thick, just sort of this nice middle ground that would let me both still get the details in and keep that style of the cartoon of the game. I keep repeating that, you probably know what I mean by now. I also thought it would make a nice contrast between the player and the monsters, because I wanted the monsters to look creepy, therefore I decided I was going to probably be doing them in a thinner line art like I usually do. So it would make a nice contrast between the sort of cartoony, goofy player character and these actually sometimes quite horrific monsters that are coming after you. Usually I do all the sketches of everything first and then maybe do the line art of one thing and then go on to sketches, but I don't usually start the colouring until I've got everything in. But on this I decided that I was just going to get the player character done, at least on the base colour and texturing, so that I can then fit everything around him. So I started with the colouring, which is just the usual, put a base colour behind on its own layer and then use clipping masks. I honestly can't stress enough how much clipping masks are like the most useful thing in the world. Use them. Like seriously, it's going to make your life so much easier with art. It means you don't have to use the same layer for all your colouring. You can use different layers for different sections and it lets you separate it all. And so if you need to like change a colour or changes hue slightly or something, you can do that easily because it's just that one layer. Also, I'd got all the flat colour in though. I did a little bit of texturing. Again, it's a cartoony style, so I wasn't going to go into the really sort of detailed textures that I usually do. Say if I do Springtrap, then he's got a lot of sort of a blotty texture to him to really get the idea of the cracks and the mould and the, you know, the bumpy texture of his suit. But here I focus more on just sort of a little bit of texturing on the material of the suit, but more defining shapes basically. And I felt that defining the shapes with texturing was more important here because of how I was going to have two different styles of lighting. Therefore, I couldn't really focus on defining shapes with the lighting because it's going to be changing. Obviously, there will be some definitions of shapes there, of course, that's just how shadows and things work. Light will bend around the shape of what it's hitting. But doing some defining here with the texturing, it just helps, you know, give that base so that I can just do general lighting over top of it without having to really worry about that. So I decided to actually add some of the lighting now just to get an idea of what's going on. So what I did was just added the multiplier layer on a dark blue and used a soft eraser just to erase where light would be hitting. It was basically just a sort of base guide of the lighting to start off with. That way I could figure out where the light's coming from, which I decided it'd be coming from the top. And then I went into doing a sort of really abstract background. So I just took my watercolour brush and I just really lightly painted in the idea of walls and a floor and ceiling. Because it's dark and a lot of details aren't going to be seen. And then I started to sketch out what the lighter background would look like, what details would be there when the light is on. So I decided on one of the corridors that are grey bricks, a weird floor, and lots of copper pipes around. That's probably the most common corridor that I find monsters in. And it's such a maze around as well, and it's always really dark, so it fits what the idea I had is. So that's why I decided on this area of the maps. So about a day passed here, I went to bed, came back to it the next morning, and I absolutely hated how it was looking. I hated the dark background, I hated the way I'd done the lights on the character, so I decided to just delete all that. I deleted the background and then I deleted the shading I'd done. I basically took the light background sketch and I decided to just start with that first. And I decided what I could do was basically use this for both the light and dark version. Just for the dark version, add much darker shading, obviously. So I started lining the background, being careful with the walls to make them nice and straight, being careful with the perspective, the fact that there's a wall in the background is probably going to be more blurred because focal distance and stuff, and using a really light hand on my tablet I made this brick texture. So I went on Google and just grabbed a reference image of the general corridor that I was thinking of, just so I could sort of see what the colours were like. I was pretty sure I knew what they were in my head, but I just wanted to make sure. So you had this sort of bluey grey for the walls and a sort of beigey colour for the ceiling and the flooring. It's also helped me really look at what texture it is for them. Bricks seem like a difficult thing to do, but it's not that bad. It's just sort of, it's horizontal lines with alternating vertical lines. And if you just sort of texture on the rough, so you can see I've made the rough line art lines here. I've just basically textured on those with a darker colour in the folds and a lighter colour on the face of the brick to give it that bit more of a 3D look. Again, this game is a cartoony style. I'm not too bothered about it being really realistic. As long as the general idea is there and it's identifiable, you know, it works. I also wanted to add some green on the pipes because if you didn't know, copper will oxidise, and this is basically when it turns green because it reacts with the oxygen in the air and that causes it to turn green. It's why the Statue of Liberty is green, because it was made out of copper and it oxidised, it reacted with the air around it and it became green. So I thought these are abandoned places, they're, you know, going to be a bit run down. So I added a bit of green tints to the copper pipes just to give it that idea. With the background in and me listening to videos about tattoo horror stories and making me question if I even want a tattoo, I went into doing some lighting, and this was going to be the first basic lighting of the general environment. So like I said before, I was going to start with the lighter lighting, and this consisted of me at first making some darker layers to get the general ambience in, and then using a shine layer to get the yellow glow of the ceiling lights ahead to go in and light some areas up. And once I got this general base in, then I could start going into more detail with the shading. So this is where I started thinking about the more precise shadows. For example, the wall at the back is going to be much darker, less light is hitting it. The intersection between the walls and the floor, it's this weird angle where light isn't going to hit as well. You got shadows on the pipes and shadows underneath the pipes where light is hitting the pipe and then the shadows being cast on the wall, making sure that there is this visible gap between the shadow and the pipe so that it does show a bit more of a 3D look. It does make it feel like the pipe is actually slightly sticking out from the wall, which they would. And then it was highlights, which is much of the same pretty much, just adding it in areas where the light is hitting and will make it shine a bit more, especially on the copper pipes. Moving on to lighting the character, it was much of the same process really. I didn't start with an overall dark layer this time, I went more manually with putting in where the darkness would be, and then making use of overlay to do some highlighting to really exaggerate where the light is hitting him right on the top of the helmet and going down. Trying to keep the idea to 3D shapes, trying not to make it look too flat. It can be quite difficult sometimes. It's quite easy to just do what I used to do in art, which is basically, say you've got two lines and you know one shape is like slightly above the other one and you just put a shadow across those two lines and that's all you do. Obviously, I can't, there's a word for it, there's a word for that type of shading. I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically where you only shade where lines are sort of separating an area and you only shade against those lines, and that's not really how you should be doing it because shadows don't just follow the outline of something, they bend around the shape, the light bends around the shape. So to make your pieces look more 3D and not as flat, you just sort of think about the shape of it and not just follow your line art basically. That probably makes no sense, I don't know how to explain it. If I can find two pieces of my art that show either side of it, I will. But yeah, that's what I can do to explain it. The darker lighting took nowhere near as long as the lighter lighting because, well, I literally just had to put like a dark layer over it, some shadows. It really wasn't much. There wasn't much in terms of highlights because there were no lights on. The only sort of light I added was this just general ambient light so you could still see what was going on. But yeah, otherwise it's just quite dark. It was just adding the shadows. It was refining some of the shadows a little bit. And there you go, dark lighting. Oh yeah, and I was still using sort of a darker blue for this. I decided on dark blue for the general ambient darkness because that's, you know, realistic. That's how darkness tends to be. And I tend to find it's nicer to use a blue rather than just going outright black. And for the lighting, I went for a yellowy colour to match the colour of the lights. I then went back and realised that if the light is sort of above him, then there's going to be a bit of darkness on the sort of middle of his body. I don't know how to explain this, but it's like how you've got rim lighting and then you've got the rest of it basically. And if the lighting is above him and sort of almost behind him as well, then there is going to be a bit of a darkness in the front of him and more of a rim lighting. So I just added in another layer to kind of give that general shadow over the front. And then added a few effects, which is basically just dust particles in the background and some smoke around the front. And then it was getting into doing the monsters. The first one I decided to do was my absolute favourite. This guy is amazing. I absolutely love him. What an MVP. He is the GOAT. I am kidding. I hate this guy. He is the bane of my existence. Coil Head, basically he's a mannequin, or it is a mannequin that his head is attached by a spring, and it's I hate it. Basically, I have a fear of being blind. I can't be blindfolded. I can't even, like, if someone asks me to close my eyes and hold my hands out, I struggle to do that. I can't do that. Pitch black darkness, because I'm blind in it, I can't do it. It's like I'm not scared of the dark. Like, I can beat darkness, but pitch black darkness where you literally can't see your hand in front of your face. No, can't do it. And this fear, it also counts for things that are behind me that I know are moving towards me, but I can't see them because they're behind me. So anything like the Weeping Angels from Doctor Who, Gold Watchers from Dark Deception, the Endos from Security Breach, anything that is the mechanic where they only move when you're not looking, and when you look at them they don't move, but when you're not looking they move towards you. I hate those things. They're horrible to me. And that is what Coil Head is. That's what Coil Head does in the game. And also the problem with Coil Head is it's so fast when you're not looking at it. It sprints towards you. It like almost teleports. It's ridiculous. So with this guy probably being my worst fear in the game, I knew I had to include him in the art. Plus, you know, creepy mannequin, they're always spooky. So like I said before, I went for a more thin line art just to kind of accentuate a more creepy vibe to it. Again, I can't draw humans, just doesn't happen. But luckily, didn't really need to be realistic because the actual mannequin itself in the game is not that realistic, so it was alright. For the actual spin, what I did was I did sort of just the classic twirlies that you do, you know, when you were bored at school and you had nothing else to do, so you just have your pen and you'd be twirling, doing weird twirls with it. I basically did that, and then I copied that layer and moved it, and then I went through and just fixed all the bits where it was crossing over, where it shouldn't have been crossing over. And it was just a quicker way of doing it rather than having to completely 100% match it myself by hand. That would have taken way too long. And bear in mind, I had 4 full monsters to draw here, so technically full characters to draw here. And this is my last day to do this. This was yesterday that I was doing this. It took all day, pretty much, and I had plans in the evening to play and record some more Lethal Company, actually, so I had to get this done, but thankfully I did. Anyways, I'm just going to let this play out rather than talking for ages over it and have fun just watching me draw it. And I'll do that for each monster. I'll just give a little bit of commentary and then I'll just let it play out. Arachnophobia warning for this part of the video. Here's a timestamp you can skip to if you don't want to see the drawing of the bunker spider. Next up was the bunker spider. I had a pose in mind for this one and I almost went a bit more of a realistic spider look. But as I looked at the reference picture of the bunker spider, I realised that they are really actually quite weird. They're not a normal spider, they're just not normal spider shape. They have legs coming out of their head, they have legs coming out the back, they have legs crossing over each other, they have more than 8 legs, I'm pretty sure. So yeah, I then went for more of the game design because at that point I'd realised that it was more of a unique design than it is just a spider. But the pose ones didn't really work. The spider was a bit too covered up by the player. So I decided to basically put the head a bit further up and have it so the body was now down below the head rather than above it, like the spider is a looming over ready to strike. Took up most of the canvas and honestly the spider is my least favourite one I did of the 4 that I chose. But it worked. It's a monster, it's creepy, spiders are creepy, so I mean I honestly don't mind spiders that much. They're fine to me as long as it's not a daddy long next or a crane fly. They're good. The Braken is also an absolute pain. I have only ever been killed by it once, and that was when I literally picked something up, turned around, and it was there, and it just broke my neck. I thought this dude has a little bit more sentience compared to the other creatures, so I decided to join him in this very deliberate pose, this pose where he's reaching out to come around and grab the player's head and just snap it. The Braken was quite a fun one to draw actually, and I really pushed myself with the pose and the anatomy of him because he's got quite a distinctive shape, and it is almost like the muscle structure of a human with the biceps and forearms and the way the shoulders come out from the neck. So it was quite fun to push myself in doing this one. The last guy I decided to do was the Thumper. I think everyone who's played the game has come across a Thumper and absolutely been terrified of this thing. For something that pulls itself along than just front legs, it is so fast and it's so loud as well. So you just hear this thump, you just basically hear this thumping running towards you, and then you just turn around and there it is. And when it does get close and it bites you, you realise it has these multiple mouths and it's like, oh my god, what is this thing? Fortunately, I've never been killed by it. I've always managed to get away from it, but I don't think that's gonna last. I think that probably that streak's gonna get broken soon. Anyways, at first I was going for a sort of angled look to have it sort of looking at the player, but I couldn't get it to work. It looked derpy, it looked awful, it just looked like my art from 2015 time. So I changed that to be a proper front view, so that it's basically partially behind the player, have it sort of rearing its mouths and ready to just munch down. And also with its dead eyes, I think it works. It's not looking directly at the player. I mean, I don't think this thing has any brain cells behind that face, so, you know, it works. Honestly, as I was drawing this guy, it reminds me of a Dilophosaurus. I know actual Dilophosaurus in real life didn't have the frills. That was actually just purely Jurassic Park, but that's what it makes me think of. Also, frilled dragons or frilled lizards. That is basically where Jurassic Park got its inspiration from for the frills, is those guys. Eventually, with all the monsters in and with it all exported and ready, it was time to put the GIF together, or GIF, or whatever you want to call it. Don't come at me, please. And there we have it. That is my Lethal Company fan art. Let me know down below which is your favourite monster that I drew. Personally, I actually really like how the Braken came out. I really like his pose. Comment down below, guys, have you played Lethal Company before? What's your thoughts on the game? Did you enjoy it? Did you scream as much as I do? Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Sorry if it's a bit rushed. I'm sorry if the video's a bit rushed, the editing's a bit rushed, the art's a bit rushed. I am very rushed at the moment. Hopefully things are going to slow down and get better. It's been manic lately for me. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed anyway. Do consider subscribing and leaving a like. I'd really appreciate it if you did. And I'll see you all in the next video. Bye! But wait, that's not all. Let's take a moment just to show off all the amazing fan art I've gotten from you guys. I absolutely love all of these, and I can't even begin to imagine people enjoying and wanting to draw my character. It's like such an honour, I guess. But yeah, big thanks to these guys. I really appreciate it. If you want to draw some fan art and get featured at the end of a video, then you can pop on down to the description and join my Discord server, and you can submit any fan art there. But yeah, thanks again to these people. Such amazing fan art. Thanks so much. I honestly can't say thank you enough.